So we did the import. Now let's take a little tour of this Visual Studio IDE. Remember, IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. Everything you need to create new programs, Windows programs. You want to create programs for Mac, you got to use a Mac. Okay. But to create Windows programs, I'm not sure about Windows Mobile. I think this will do it. But it won't do Android, it won't do iOS, but Windows programs is right in this box. You have, excuse me, all kinds of window panes, as they're called. This is your main development window. This is the graphical version of it. Notice it says design, and this is the code version. You'll learn to bounce back and forth between those very quickly because you do it all the time. You can have lots of tabs open across the top here in this class, 2, 3 maybe, that's about it. Intermediate, I've seen people 6, 7 of them shooting across here because they're working on all of them kind of at the same time. To the right, we've already talked a little bit about the Solution Explorer. The Solution Explorer has in it kind of the layout of your solution. What's most important in here is the form file. Later on, there'll be a couple of more files in there, but that's what's most important. Most of the rest of the stuff we hardly touch. Underneath the Solution Explorer is the Properties window. Now I'm going to make mine bigger if you touch the top of it. We don't do much with the Solution Explorer. We're not going to get rid of it, but we don't do much with it. We do a lot with the Properties window, so I'm going to make it as big as possible on your screen. If you're full screen, it could probably be that tall, right? That'll come in handy. In my recording screen, I'm a little limited here. I'm going to have to scroll, but that's okay. Remember when we were talking about objects last time, I mentioned that all objects have properties, attributes, things that you can change. This form is an object. Click on it. And notice that your properties window here changes. And you get a big old long list. These are all the things about that form that you can change. I just clicked on the form over here once. If you double click it, you're going to get code. If you get code, either close it or flip back to the design window. Because if you watch here, I'll double click. Okay, but that's one thing you're going to learn very quickly in this class. Don't double click stuff. If you double click, look, it generated new code. What if I don't need that? Then I delete it. Unfortunately, it's also put something in the designer window where I said, we're not going to go. We'll have to delete it there. I'm just going to leave it for right now. Back to the design window up here. So try not to double click stuff unless you mean it. Across the top, it says Form 1. That's pretty lame. In the Properties window, scroll down to Text. These should be alphabetized. That button right there gives you the properties alphabetical. You can also categorize them, but that's absolutely insane. I don't know why it's even still there, because categorizing, they're so hard to find things. I just alphabetize them, much easier. Here's a text property. It controls the text that appears across the top of the screen. Highlight the word Form 1, and let's put in your name, apostrophe sample program. Nothing changes until you press enter. You can edit that, delete, insert, fix the spelling of your name, whatever you want to do. But you have to be in the properties window and find the right property. And mine doesn't quite fit, but that's okay. Some of you are squinting. I cannot make this bigger. So you'll just have to kind of listen to what I'm talking about. And I hope you're doing that anyways. If you're trying to watch me, that's harder. If you listen to me and look at yours, and I say go to the properties window very quickly, you'll learn that's over here, and go to the text property, scroll, scroll, scroll. You don't have to watch me click it. Sometimes it's better to listen. But there's all kinds of properties here. What do they all do? Well, some of them I can't tell you. I don't know. Don't use them. The ones I do use, I will share with you. A few of you will experiment with some of them, and that's absolutely great. Remember what happened when I ran the zombie into the wall or Angry Birds into the wall? How many of you did that? Had the Angry Bird run into one of those bricks and watch him cry and do whatever? You know, it's kind of fun to torture the bird. You can mess with some of these. If you change one, like auto validate, I don't even know what that means. If you change one, you can right click it and reset it anytime you want. So you can experiment and go through and any of them that are bold, you have changed. That one's bold. I'll talk about some of the other properties in a minute. Right now, we're still taking our tour. Solution Explorer properties window. Under the Solution Explorer, do you have anything else? Is there a tab down there? Is there a tab underneath there? Because I've removed mine. It looks like my settings might have removed that. That's cool. Anybody see Team Builder or class thing? Nothing there, right? You're all looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. So that's good. Looks like they've been removed. Good. I didn't know my settings did that. Over here on the left, you see a toolbox. Anything else? Cool. My settings did. That didn't used to happen. So now my settings are getting rid of excess windows that we don't use. I was going to show you how to close them. I don't have to. They're gone. Good news is we can bring them back when we need them. Here's the toolbox. It's hidden temporarily, got it out of the way. To open it, you can't just hover. For those of you who've been around, you used to be able to hover and it would pop up. Now you have to click it and the toolbox pops up. What tools? Let's go to the common controls. Look at all this stuff. Buttons and check boxes and combo boxes and date pickers and labels and picture boxes and radio buttons, all your favorite Windows objects right there for the taking. And I'll show you how to use the toolbox in just a little bit. As I mentioned, a lot of the other windows are gone. And they've disappeared. There's a menu, toolbar. The Server Explorer is gone. Probably, if you have any extra ones here that you don't recognize, you can close them or just ignore them. Either way. Many of these windows, like the toolbox, if you click outside of it, it collapses automatically. Occasionally that's nice, but let's expand it again. And notice it covers up my form. And usually when you're designing a form and putting all your stuff on there, you don't want it covering it up, so you can pin this into place. There's a little pin up there. It's like a push pin. If you click that, it'll lock this window open, and what's also nice is it moves this one over so that now you can do both. If you don't like the Solution Explorer here, you can unpin it and it will collapse and just push over to the side. These I use too much. I don't collapse them. But the toolbox, I open it for a while, I use it, and then when I'm done with it, I collapse it again so I get as much screen space, particularly when I'm writing code, as possible, because I want to see as much code on the screen as I can. So the little push pins let you do that. So let's hit the push pin again, and the toolbox will close, and we'll bring that back. Not Sarah, Rachel.
When we're writing code, can we move the code page to another screen?
You may. That's coming up here, as a matter of fact, so hang in there. Okay, so that's the push pin. You can resize just about anything. If your toolbox is too small, push pin, grab its edges, just like Windows. Grab the edge, pull it over, put it back when you're done. You can do that with these. We did it with the properties window, just about anything. Is your title bar chopped off like mine? Word program, you can resize it. Grab the handles. Okay, that font looks kind of big to me, but that's okay. And by the way, now what happens when I start? Runs the program, recompiles it, makes a brand new, fresh ones and zeros copy, and now it says Volker sample program at the top. Any change you make doesn't take effect in the executable version until you run. You can just close that now that I see it worked. That one goes away, and now I'm back. So these are all resizable. Hit the push pin to put that toolbox away for a while. Rachel just mentioned, if you wish, you can grab these tabs. Now just watch up here, you don't have to follow. I'm going to make a little more room so I can see two things at once here. Let's get rid of extra space. Okay, and I can now grab one of these. Rachel's got two screens at home. Real IT majors show their extensions, and most IT majors have at least two monitors at home. I don't know how you get by with just one. It's really hard for me here in class because I have not figured out how to get this to go there and be able to switch them back. It doesn't work very well because of the Mac. Right. It's painful to only have one monitor in here. It's nice and big. That helps. But in my office, two. At home, two. I'm using a laptop. I hate it. Okay. It's really nice to have two. So what Rachel wants to do is maybe grab this and put it on the other screen. And now she can see this and the code at the same time and have one on one screen, one over here. It's really big, lots of space for development. That's cool. But now how do you get this back? You drag it back. And when you drag it back, notice the little guide pops up. And you could park it here and it'll go side by side, or I park it in the middle and they stack on top of each other again. So you can drag these tabs all over the place. And in this class, like I said, there's only 2 or 3. But when you have 7, it's nice to have some over here and some over there, different monitors. It's a good Christmas present if you don't have dual monitors. Or a 27-inch, that's really nice, 27-inch single monitor. But it's different having dual, because I can maximize on this one and not maximize on it. There's a little more flexibility having dual monitors. Volker's advice. You can accidentally close this one and resize that one and kind of squeeze this in there. Hope you're not following. If you make a real mess, which I have now done, you can always go to Window, and this is in my notes, reset the window layout. You sure? Yeah, I made a mess. Fix it. Oh, this one's floating on top. That's why I didn't grab it, I think. So I'll have to put that one back. But notice these are back. That one's back to its original size, which I didn't like, and these are too wide, and no. But if you really make a mess and you can't figure out how to get things back, it's Window Reset. And it'll put most everything back where you put it, where it was when it started. There's where it tells you how to do it. In the OneDrive folder, I don't think I left it open. You can look at it later. In the OneDrive folder, there's a little bitty text document that says things to do for brand new projects. Every time you create a new project, in this class you're going to do that quite a bit. Every time you start a new project, here's the things you should do just because Volker says you got to do all that stuff. It's a quick little checklist. I'm going to go through them here, but it's not a checklist that I go through here. I have to talk about things and teach you things and show you things. On the OneDrive page where you just got my settings, there's another one that says things to do for new projects or something like that. Download that. Keep it handy until you get really good at it. The first thing I normally do when I start a brand new project is rename Form 1. Because that's a pretty stupid name for a form. When you got 35 of them, how do you know which one is which? You can give your forms, just like your files, better names. There's a couple of ways to do this. This is what I consider the right way. Over here in your Solution Explorer, click Form 1. When you click it here, you get the properties of the file. When you click it over here, you get the properties of the form, the object. I want the file properties, and here it's called form1.cs. I can rename it. Just put your cursor in there, take out the form 1. Don't take out the .cs, that's the file extension. If you accidentally delete that, put it back. .cs is the extension for a C# file. And now we want to give this form a name. In a minute, we're going to be talking about how do we name things in object-oriented programming. There's pretty consistent standards. You always start with a 2 or a 3-letter prefix. What kind of an object is this? Is it a form? Is it a label? Is it a text box? Is it a radio button? This is a form. My prefix for form is FRM, lowercase. If you want to use something different, be weird, okay, just be consistent. There is no standard for what to use as a prefix for a form. There's my guidelines. I have mine, and I'm pretty consistent with them. As long as you're consistent, I'll be fine. And then what's the form for? This is my sample form. And notice that I capitalize the first word, I capitalize every word after the prefix. So the prefix is FRM. And then if I was calling this Volker sample, with a capital V and a capital S. That's called camelback notation. Capital letters, Lord, looks like a camel's back. We're going to use camelback notation a lot. Start lowercase. Every word thereafter is uppercase. It kind of looks like a camel's back. So now my form has a new name. Press enter, locks it in, and notice it also changed it up here. It's just a reflection of what's down here. But if you do it that way, there's a side effect. Remember, Lightbot, sometimes there's side effects. In this case, if you do it this way, there's a good side effect that will save you a half a point down the road. Click on the form now over here, the actual form object. Notice the form object is no longer called Form1. If you change the name like we just did here, it will also change the name here automatically. That's a good thing. We want those to match. It's really terrible. This is your object's name. This is my Packer glass object. Right? That's the object name. The object name, in my mind, the form name and the form file name ought to be the same. Otherwise, when you go looking for it later, how are you going to find it if they have different names? They should match. If you rename it here like we just did, it will update the other one automatically. That's the first thing you do. You create a new project. Ta-da! Form. Give the form a new name right away. If you don't, they don't match, and I mean exactly, FRM, capital S, if they don't match exactly, I mean, that's a half a point. There goes your candy bar. Just because the form name and the file name don't match. Yep. That'll save you a lot of grief when you start creating projects with hundreds of forms, trying to find them. Much easier when the file name is the same as the form name itself. If you somehow miss, you can come in here and change this one as well. So I can make this 234. When I change this one, notice it didn't change my file name. This is just little tips that Volker's giving you here. If you change the file name, it'll change the form name. If you change the form name, it doesn't change the file name. The reverse is not true. But if you forget, you can always come in here and change this. It should match that exactly except for the .cs. And a few of you lose half points and you'll figure that out as we go. Remember, don't wipe out the CS on the file name. If there's a CS on it, leave it. That's the file name. We don't want to remove that because that'll cause trouble. Maybe I can recover it. If you forget and leave it off, all of a sudden your form goes stupid. Go back in there, type it back in, .cs at the end, and maybe it'll come back again. Usually it will. A lot of these things all tie together, so be careful. Here's the big important tip. Do not change the solution, project, source files from Windows. If you want to change the name of something like we just changed the name of this file, change it inside of here, inside Visual Studio, except for one thing. Notice what happened in here. My form name is now called form sample. The designer file is now called formsample.designer.cs. All that gets done by Visual Studio automatically, and it keeps the catalogs up to date because we did it inside the system. The only one you should rename from using Windows is the outsidemost folder, the one we did before, that one. That'll save you some grief. Don't change the names. Using Windows, don't change anything on the inside. Use Visual Studio. If you name them right in the first place, you'll be in good shape. Here's some example form names. FRM, welcome screen, that's Camelback. Employee entry, Camelback. Update screen, Camelback. Notice they're all forms. They all have the same prefix. The prefix helps us keep track of what kind of an object it is, and that'll help your sanity. It's not easy being an IT major, software developer, networker. Consistency, standards, analness helps your sanity. Really does. Here's the rules. If you want to change an object, click on it. So we did that already, but we'll do it again. Here's an object. I clicked on it, and you go up to its name property. The name is so important because we're going to use it everywhere that they put parentheses around it to force it to show up at the top of the list. You will not find the name property under N. You'll find it at the top. You get used to that real fast. Every object on your form, everything you ever add to this will probably get a new name. Visual Studio will assign it a name, but those are really lame. The author of the book has his own naming standards. Things get to be this long. I don't like them. I like my camelback prefix. If you're consistent, I can live with it if you want to follow what's going on in the book, but that's not the way I'm going to do it. Where do the naming standards get developed? Everybody's got their own. Sentry probably has naming standards. Skyward has naming standards. Volker has naming standards. You should create your own. Get used to them. Unfortunately, if you get used to them and get hired at Skyward, you're going to have to change to match theirs. Otherwise, you don't last longer. Right? Sentry's got naming standards. And some of them are horrendous. But you don't follow them, and big supervisors like Paul over there start beating on you and say, what's wrong with you? Usually the prefix is 3 characters. FRM, TXT for a text box. Some people like TBX for text box, means more to them. LBL for label or LAB. Doesn't matter as long as it makes sense to you and it's consistent. You don't have to necessarily follow mine. Here's some examples. Here's the label for the first name. Here's the text box that's got the address in it. Here's a button for exiting my form. Here's a picture that's got my company logo in it. I can already tell what all those things are just by looking at the prefix. Occasionally you'll add objects to your form that are just there to make it look pretty. You don't have to rename those. The only time you have to rename them is if you refer to them in code. A button is always referred to in code, because why would you have a button that doesn't do anything? So when you teach it to do something, you have to refer to it by name. A text box where the user enters their address. Why are you asking for it if you're not going to use it? Occasionally, though, we'll have labels on the form. It's just a title, just to make the form look pretty. Those you don't have to rename. All of this I will repeat over and over and over again. Some of you are going to get sick of it, and hopefully it'll help you all remember my naming standards. You should never in your code refer to label 1. Which one's that? Give it a better name first, and then use the name in code. Makes your code more maintainable. Sarah?
Will we get points out?
Absolutely. Remember Volker's #1 rule, we're creating maintainable code. Poor variable names, poor object names are not maintainable. Paul keeps nodding back there. I appreciate it. He's got a little bit of experience. Yeah, he's right. All right, let's think around with the form a little bit. Here's the properties of forms that I usually mess with. I don't use them every single time, but these are the ones I have frequently messed around with. And notice there's a half a page. Well, good grief, look at all these properties. You know what I'm messing with most of those? No, most of them I don't mess with. Some of them I don't even know what they're for. Never used them. The first one that I messed with, I already showed you, and this is also on that checklist of things to do. This should not say FRM sample across the top here. That's a pretty stupid title for your form when the program's running. So give it a title. We did that already by changing its text. That's usually step number 2. You create a form, change it, give it a good name, and then you change the title using the text property. I will often do this. I'm scrolling. What's the name of that property? I forget the name of the property. Is it title? Is it text? What is it? There aren't that many. Scroll through it. Might be easier than going to find my notes, find the right page in my notes, and then find the one that tells you it's text. Don't be afraid to look around. After a while, many of these become second nature. We can change the back color of our form. Cool. Gray's boring. But Microsoft likes gray. Microsoft has its own standards, by the way. And I think somewhere in my notes I have a link to those standards and what they recommend you do. And their first recommendation is gray with black background is easy for everybody, regardless of color blindness, those kinds of things, for everybody to read. It's boring, so let's fix it. Back color, right there. First thing in case you're not, if you don't see it, you might have the wrong object selected. Click on the form, make sure it's the selected object. Later on, we're going to have dozens of objects. If you're changing the background color of the form, you have to make sure the form has these handles, the little boxes, those are called handles. Form has to have the handles, then we can change its background color. And there's some boring systems colors. You can pick one of those. Or if you want to spruce it up a little bit, you can go to web. And these are supposed to be standard web colors with nice names like honeydew and whatever. If you like those colors, cool. I usually go to custom. What if you don't like any of these colors? You can set the background of the form to any of 2 billion colors that Windows can sense. But you have to know how to put in special codes, and that's kind of beyond us right now. I like light colored backgrounds, dark colored text. Some of you like dark backgrounds with bright pink text. That's fine. What's hard for me and where I start thinking about taking points is if I can't read it because you've got bright yellow on bright green and it kind of glows and you can't read it. You want people using your programs a lot. And if they're going to stare at it a long time, you want to make it relatively friendly. I recommend you pick one of these top colors up here and go light green, and poof, the background color of your form changes. And if you run it, it's green. What if you don't like the colors around the outside? I think shinies are different, right? You have this mustard color around the outside? Shiny? Around the outside of your program, is it green like this when you run it? Hit the run button, start button.
I'm getting a lot of errors.
You're getting errors already? Uh-oh. Okay, just sit back and relax. But if you change your Windows colors, these will change automatically. You cannot control this color from within your program. Because if the user says, I want all my windows to have purple borders, so's yours. And the green and purple may not look so good. Okay, I got a bunch of windows that popped up here. I hate those windows. Close them. Visual Studio at some point will remember that you don't like them and quit putting them there. Good grief. Please. Thank you. Lots of windows to close. Visual Studio will now remember that and only bring them back when you need them. Okay. Oh, here's another kicker. Notice up on my toolbar, where's my run button? Continue button. It's grayed out. How come I can't run my program? Because it's already running. While your program is running, you cannot change anything because you would be changing the contents of the ones and zeros. There are a few things, subtle things you can change. But while it's running, notice my properties window's gone. And I get this all the time. Email, I can't see my properties window. Are you running? How do you know if you're running? There's a stop button. And there's my program icon down on my taskbar. If you're running, you can't change things. So you have to stop the program. You don't minimize it, you close it. Or you can just hit the stop button. And it'll stop your program. And now there's my properties window and my start button's back again. Very common mistake. You go into the code, you start typing and it won't let you. Something wrong with Visual Studio. Are you running? I don't even get up. I just sit right here. Are you running? Oh, off you go. Very common mistake. All right, what else can we change here? Background color, we did that. Background colors have side effects. When you change the background color and we add new things onto the form later, like text boxes and labels, they automatically adopt this background color. So when you change the background color of the form, it also changes the background color of some of the objects on the form, and that's a little disconcerting sometimes. But if you know what happens, there's a way around it. Let's see, do I want to do this one now? No, let's jump up. Remind me to come back to icon. I think I'll do that last. Let's do start position. If you watch up here, you don't have to follow. I'm going to run this. And notice where my window is. It's kind of over here, a little to the left, a little down. And if I run it again, it's shifted a little bit. What happens is it's doing this cascading thing until it runs out of room. Every time you start it, it starts in a position that's different. That's annoying. I'm scrolling down here to the start position property. My form is selected. If you don't see the property, you select your form. And it's Windows default. No, I like center screen. I have occasionally used center parent. If you have two forms or one starts the other one, maybe you want that in the center. Center parent, that's a requirement. Sarah's looking at me like, I don't want it. Tough, part of our standards. Start it in the middle so it's always in the same spot. It doesn't mean the user can't move it. It just means it always starts. Right. I forgot to press enter or something because it should have done that. Center, oh, I did parent. Center screen, that's better. And it always starts in the middle. You can still move it, you can still resize it, you can do whatever you want with it, but it starts in the middle so it jumps right out at you when you're running it. Volcker standard, gotta live with it. If you're testing it, make sure you close it so that you can continue to process. What else we got here? Font. Okay, I got a pretty boring font up here. If you go to font, you can change it from Microsoft Sans Serif 8.25. That look is not 8.25. The stuff on my form is. Let's save font for a little later. Or actually, let's do this first. Let's go to the toolbox. Expand it by clicking on it. And if you don't see it, choose Common Controls and find the label. Double click it. Like you mean it. And then just click, and notice now there's a label on your form. I can drag that by moving it, to move it, excuse me. And notice its size. It might seem kind of small, but that is the Microsoft standard size for stuff. These are just capitalized. It's the same size as those. Microsoft standard size is 8.5 points. Well, what if you don't see very well? Those people know how to change the zoom level of their Windows screen to make 8.5 bigger. So 8.5 is the standard. But if I change the font, now careful now. Now we've got two objects, right? Notice I'm changing the font of label 1. I'm going to click on the form because I want to change the font of the form. Anywhere. Okay. Edges, now I have the label. It has one little handle. Now I got the form. It's got handles. Change the form font to, I don't know, pick one of these cool things here like monotype cursiva, and maybe I'll make it italics and bold, size 16. Watch what happens. Everything on your form that has a font changes to match that, because you probably want consistency. If you have a title, there's the fancy font. If you have a title, maybe you want it to be a different font. Then you change the font of the title. When you change the form, everything on the form changes too. So if you change the font of the form changes everything on the form. If I change the foreground color, that's the font color, to dark red, I changed the form and the label changed automatically. Everything changes. I rarely change the font color of the form because it affects everything. Unless I want everything bigger. I did that for a while with my Lions project, made everything bigger, and they said, why is this so big after a while? Because they asked for it 2 years ago, can you make it bigger? Now they look at it and everything in Windows is normal size, and then they run their program with this big old font. I spent a month putting all the fonts back. So I don't normally do that. So how do I put it back? Right click, reset. On any property, the font, right click, reset. Everything goes back. Did you notice how the form got bigger when I made the font bigger? Need more room because the text is bigger, so it made the form bigger. I don't normally mess with the form fonts. Foreground color I just showed you, don't usually mess with that. Background image, let's save that one for a second. That's it. Okay. Two more things, background image and the forms icon. This icon in the upper left-hand corner is a generic icon. Thou shalt not submit projects to me with generic icons. It's just not professional. Go Go find one that's a little more appropriate for your program. You're doing a bowling program, find a little bowling icon, bowling pin, bowling ball, whatever. I don't even care if it matches the project. Just change it so that I know you know how. Rachel,
Can we make them?
can you make, I don't know, can you? May you? Yes. Can you is a whole different question. I have some for you. Let's go get them. Go to your browser, open up Firefox, go back to OneDrive. So I'm going to my page and then OneDrive. It's the quickest way to get to OneDrive, unless you want to make a bookmark for it. Okay. And I'm in the wrong OneDrive, so hang on a second. I think that's the wrong one. Yep, I got to sign out. Pam, you may have to do the same thing again. You want to go to MSTC VGOL Hotmail student if you're not still there. Sign in. Programming logic beginning. Here's the Unit 2 in-class folder. It's got all kinds of stuff in it. Click on it. It's got pictures and icons and all kinds of cool things. I'm planning ahead. Please, thank you. After I'm done with my projects, I put them up there. I might not do it today, but in Unit 3, Unit 4, every time I create something in class, I put it up on OneDrive. You can go home and get mine. When I change it, I replace the old with the new. At the end of the lecture, the final version of what I did in class will be on OneDrive. But OneDrive also has starter places like this. It's my Unit 2 starter folder because it's got lots of cool icons and some not so cool pictures. Right. Easiest way to download the whole thing. Let's download the whole thing. Unit 2 in class. Right click the whole folder, download it. Save it. This time I would save it to your desktop so it's easy to find. Desktop. Unit 2 in class. Notice the extension. IT majors show their extensions. This is why, because you wouldn't know that, otherwise it would hide it. It's a zip file. When you download lots of things off of OneDrive, it zips them, compresses them into one file. Save. Shouldn't take very long. Now I'm going to minimize everything so I can see my desktop. Oops, I just put that on my Mac desktop. Oh. Do that one more time. You shouldn't have that issue because you shouldn't be using both. So one more time, Windows download. It's still a zip file. Save it. I have a special program installed on my computer called WinRAR that does zipping. It's an enhanced zip program, but minimize everything. And there's my zip file. Now mine's got little books on it. Yours is probably a folder with a zipper in it, right? That tells you it's compressed. A couple of people have already told me, I don't have to unzip it. I can look in. Yes, you can look inside by simply double clicking it. You can look inside, but you can't change anything in there. So my advice is right click it. And what does it say on yours in Windows? I forget. Unzip, uncompress. Pardon me? Extract all. Thank you. And notice that mine does extract here. Yours is extract all. Now what does it do? Creates another folder. Oh, actually, it took all the pictures, put them on your desktop. Okay. Or it created another folder. What did it do for you? Same thing as mine? Another folder. But notice this folder doesn't have the zipper on it. Once you've unzipped, you can delete the zipper folder because you don't need it anymore. It's in the recording. You can try it again. Almost done. I want to put an icon on my form. Back to Visual Studio. Select the form. Scroll down to icon. There's the lame one. We need to change that. To change it, you click the dots over here on the left. That tells you a dialog box is coming. It's basically a browse button. And now it says, where's your icon? Desktop. And in your case, you go into the Unit 4 program. Now, Rachel was asking me, can we create our own? Creating icons is a bit of a challenge unless you've downloaded a program from someplace. Visual Studio has an icon editor. I'm not an artist. I don't make my own. I'll go steal them. Notice you must create a file with an ICO extension. It has to have an ICO extension in order to be a form icon. You cannot use PNG files, JPEG files, bump files, TIFF files. Can't do it. Let's use the wise guy facer. Just double click it and it'll put a smaller version in your title bar. Notice it changed right away. Thou shalt always. Now I just mentioned that file should be up there in OneDrive. I was just in OneDrive. Oh, here it is. Steps to complete for every new form on OneDrive. I'm going to open that up, take a look. And it says, be sure in the initial screen to give it a good name, not Windows Application 1. Change the file name. Oops. Time to update. It's not VB anymore, it's CS. Okay. Don't remove the CS. Change the title, showed you how. Change the start position, already showed you how. Change the form icon, I just showed you how. Every time you start a new project or add a new form to an existing project, you go through these steps and you'll save yourself 3 points because each one of those is a half. But what about number 6, the project icon? What's he talking about? Run your program. And notice now there's a happy face. Notice down in the taskbar, happy face, cool. I don't know about how cool the happy face, but you get the idea. It's easy to change. How much code have you written? None. Worst you've had to do is type the title. But all of this is generating code behind the screen, behind the scenes. Now, let me show you one. I just ran my program. Don't follow. We're out of time here. Okay. I'm going back to my project. Here it is. Sample, bin folder, debug. Oh, look at the sample icon. Where's my happy face? What we changed was the form icon. Your project could have 10, 20, 30 forms, and you can have a different icon on each form, if you wish. In addition to that, there's the icon that gets assigned to the exe file. That's different. And I require you, that one's even more lame. I definitely require, because when you share this with your friends, you're going to want the happy face on there, not this, what's that icon for? And you're going to go, ah, it's just on there. I didn't change it. Lame. Let's fix it. This one's a little trickier though. It's not part of the form, it's part of the project. It's a project icon. So we have to go to the project, that's sample, and we have to change its properties. We have to use that little wrench right there. I think it's a double click to open it. How do you know when to single or double click? Volker's advice, single click it. If it doesn't do anything, double click it. Here we go, and look, there's the lame icon right there. If it says default icon when I open up your project, this is one of the first places I go, minus a half, save myself a candy bar. How do you change it? Dots. Where do you go? Desktop. I usually make it the same one because it's hard enough to find a good icon. Once I find it, I use it for both the form and the project. Double click. Now my happy face is in there. You can close this properties window when you're done because that's about all we do in there. I double clicked on the wrench, open this up, hit the dots, picked an icon. And now, don't follow, I'm going to go look, and the icon has not changed. Why not? Because I didn't run it. If I've changed anything in my program and I want to see the results, I have to run it. I still have the happy face here, still have the happy face here, but now the happy face is on there. That's the project icon. It's in the recording. It's in the notes a little later. Chris.
Can you use the same icon for each form?
Please do. If you don't want to go, if Chris has got the Chicago Blackhawks icon, he finds one, said that's going to be the icon for every single program, I'm cool with that. If you're a Vikings fan, you might want to reconsider. But his question is, do I have to go looking for a new icon for everything? No, but it's kind of nice when if you've got a tic-tac-toe game to have an X or an O or a tic-tac-toe icon. Where do you find icons?
Google.
Good answer. I'm going to Google, and I tend to go to Google Images. I even have a shortcut for it because I go there all the time. However, if you're looking for Blackhawks, okay, these are not icons. They are JPEG files, PNG files, something. If you want to find icons, I think you have to go to Search Tools, type, and there isn't even an icon in there. More tools, sizes, results, type, time. Guess they took it away. You can do a search up here for ICO. Not N, just ICO, and that'll help. But even some of there's some. All right? And Mario, that's cool, but he's probably not an icon. They're not easy to find. I have thousands of them. All right? You can use Google, but make sure that the file that you're downloading, when you say save this image, make sure it says icon. If it doesn't say icon, you didn't find one. There are free icon libraries out there if you want to search for them. Sometime this weekend, I will be putting my icon library, which is huge. It's got some really old, lame ones. It's got some others that are okay. I will put those on OneDrive so that you can download them. I have a folder called Volker's Favorites that only has a couple of hundred. But if you're Chris and you've got to have the Blackhawk or the Chicago Cubs icon, go find it. It's probably there someplace. But remember, most of them are going to be this big, and the Chicago Cubs icon, maybe not too bad. Okay, but the Blackhawks icon at that size, and it's never any bigger, might not look very good. Okay? So then you experiment. Find something else. The Brewer's glove, that'll work. If you can find it. That's enough. I've kept you for a couple minutes longer. No homework. I didn't get far enough. Some of you are leaving already, but hang on just a second. I'll go back to my notes. How close are we to the homework? Oh, a whole nother page, a whole nother page. Oh my goodness, there it is. On the right-hand side, even in the printed notes, they're probably gray. That's the next ticket. Page 62 in the book, there are checkpoints. They look like this. That's the next ticket. It's not assigned. I'm guessing it's going to be Tuesday. Wednesday.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tuesday.
Yeah, no class on Monday in case you didn't realize. All right. Which means you guys are now going to be behind everybody else. Okay, these guys are here ahead. Next week, they'll be coming after. This is the next ticket if you want to take a stab at it, but I haven't assigned it yet. Please don't send it to me. I don't have room in my ticket Blackboard thing yet. And if I put it in there, then you're going to mess everybody else up. Somebody was upset because they had a 66% in this class. That's an F. Well, I hadn't logged their Angry Birds ticket yet. As soon as I did that, they went from 66 to 100. I assume they're happy now.
So we're not supposed to send Angry Birds with you?
Yes, Angry Birds is waiting. Yes. You sent me Angry Birds.
Yeah,
You got to send me Lightbot. Yes, I got yours. All right. But anyways, if your grade's not what you want, take a look, see what's missing. But don't send me this ticket because then I have to make tickets for it. Save it for later. But you can start on it if you're bored this weekend. That's all.